Welcome one and all back to another episode of The Longhouse, a show about art, culture, politics, history, etc., all with a true right Nordic perspective. Alternatively, we can be described as the NPR of the... What is it we're again? Is it the sensible centrist these days?
The neocentrists, I think that's
the NPR of the neocentrists.
Neologists. Yeah.
Just very sensible people all around.
Very sensible people all around. We are missing one member for a little while. Leo Borealis is going to join us very soon. And until that time, we want to start the stream talking a bit about the Nordic cultures around the time of the Vikings. As far as I understood, today we are going to be continuing our history stream, starting from the date of the raid on Lindisfarne and onwards for a while. But first, with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Luddic Path.
Yes, it's good to be back as usual. I'm a bit under the weather today, so I'm glad I'm not going to carry this stream. But I'm excited to hear to have this stream finally come on, because it's been quite a while, hasn't it?
I think, and I've been excited about this for quite a while, so I'm looking forward to this as soon as we get going here. Also, JGreenriver back from the attempted Scandi history number 2. To talk to us about Viking societies, Viking games, and a bit of the culture in general, the day-to-day stuff.
Yes, thank you for having me on again.
Of course. And last but not least, Birkarl.
Hyvää iltaa kaikille.
To groip Leo at JGreenriver from the northeast.
Well, not that much northeast.
No.
Good to be here.
No. Okay.
Are we just jumping straight into it? Or...
Yeah, I'm just getting my ducks in a row here. Yeah, we talked about this before we went live, that the only newsworthy thing that's not like, here, have a laugh about this article, would be the Kanye stuff, but I'm not very interested in getting into that, to be honest. And it seems like neither are you guys.
All right. Well, then I should just start out by talking a bit about Viking society.
I'd love to hear JG talk about Viking society, but before that, if we are going to take a recent topic real quickly, I want to give out my own framing of sensible centrism. I want to frame the linear history theory as an extremist theory, the Finno-Korean hyperwar as another extremist theory, and Hyperborea as the sensible center.
The Hyperborea is the sensible center. All right.
Absolutely.
That sounds sensible. I can only say that.
So you would you like one of the maps that we have here?
Yeah, let's throw a map up of Northern Europe so we can see what we're talking about. So I'm gonna talk about. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So I'm gonna talk about Viking society in general, and I'm gonna take it from the top down and then go into finer details as I talk. And of course, I'm talking about not only Scandinavia but also areas or locations outside of Scandinavia where there was Vikings. So whenever I describe something, it's a general tendency. It's not perfect over the all of Viking society. You will find exceptions everywhere you go, and that goes for everything I talk about.
Yeah, guys, just because you know one Viking who didn't have like blonde hair and red beard, it doesn't mean that that's the rule.
Indeed. so just to start out with like describing what world are we in, and we are in a world where there is villages. There is no towns. You have a village every 20 to 50 kilometers along all of the coastlines around all of Scandinavia. You don't have like big towns like Stockholm or Hedeby, one of the bigger towns later on. They basically don't exist in Scandinavia at all. Most villages is like 200 people big. And the rest of Scandinavia is covered by the mountains up in Norway and Sweden, or in forest like in Denmark, or in Finland you have like lakes and forests as well. Yeah, swamp. Yeah, and so this puts all of Scandinavia in a situation where they can only communicate or trade with each other if they are sailing. And over time, that makes Vikings, or the Scandinavians, or whatever we want to call them, into the most advanced ship-faring nations. And so that means that a lot of things are centered around shipbuilding. It's centered about trade. It's centered around traveling around with boat. And due to that, they produce the best boats. They have the best fishing boats. They have the best transport boats. They have the best boats for merchants. They have the best attack boats, like the longboat, right? That's a well-known ship, and this lasts for 500 years, 600 years, all the way up to Lübeck. The boats that the Hansa has is actually Viking ships that is more advanced. Like they just continued the style, but it's actually still Viking boats.
It's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, what else do we have here? There is no real big settlements, as I said before. You do have one though, and that is Hedeby, which pops up in southern Denmark. It's located around where you can see it says Kiel on the map. Kiel. A little bit to the west of that.
And you can zoom in on it here.
You can see that if you look closely, there's like a canal across. At that time, there was no canal, but it is suspected that people would take the ships and carry it from one side to the other side of that landmass. If you zoom in where you have Kiel. So there's a big city there, a city. It's a town. It's suspected to have gotten up to around 5,000 people in total, and that is the closest thing that we have to what you could call civilization in Scandinavia at this point.
Now, what year are we talking here?
Well, Hedeby has a couple of stages. It has a stage in pre-800, right? So around Lindisfarne and before, where it is grown up to be about 5,000 people. But then it goes down in the 9th century and the 10th century, and then it has another revival in the 10th century. So there's a period where it's dead during the Viking Age, probably because they could travel around with their good ships around Denmark. easier than carrying the ship across the landmass. But it's not a city that becomes like 30,000 people, or like Venice or Rome with 100,000 people. It's 5,000 people we're talking about. And it's a trading center for fur coming from the north, and then all the things coming from the south, from the post-Roman Empire. And it is a trading center both from the north to south and from the west to east.
So is it because of the trading that they're able to sort of scale it up larger than the other villages, or is there some other like geographic reason for why this particular settlement is so much bigger?
Yeah, so first, if you look at the location, it's almost perfect for trading to north, south, east, west. So it is because of the location, but it's the trade that makes it grow big, right? It's like Venice and Genoa. You couldn't have had better trading locations. You need the location in order to get the trade. Is that a better way to frame it, perhaps?
Yeah, but I would also like to add that a lot of these trading places, well, JG talked about the biggest one, but on a very small scale, not even 100 people, these trading locations do exist all over the place.
Yeah.
And often they're only trading locations, meaning people don't live there. They gather there to trade.
Yes, very true. Yeah, I was not really talking about it in the sense of trade, but yes, that is very true. Yeah, so just to go back to the villages that there are in the rest of Scandinavia, each village is ruled by a chieftain, and then he has his best men, which are called jarls. But this changes over time. So if you are in the 7th century or 8th century, then you would have the chieftain and his jarls in the same village. But later on, the title of jarl becomes more like nobility. And he might actually run his own small village, maybe 20 kilometers away or 5 kilometers
away. So he sort of transfers from like top guy to duke or something like that.
Yeah, because Scandinavian society develops, right? So it's not the title of jarl is not static in the period. Oh yeah. So besides these villages and the trading places and the few places that grow big, like Hedeby, you have fortifications. So again, in southern Denmark, you had the Dannevirke, which was a big wall built across around the same place where Hedeby was located.
I'm just highlighting Nordan on here, saying that Jarl would be the Earl on English or in English.
Yeah, that's a good understanding. Yeah, good translation. But you also had like ring fortresses built across the south, where I think there was 12 locations, I believe, that is suspected to be ring fortresses. Could you pull up one of the pictures for that?
Yes,
perhaps, so people can understand that.
Which one did you? Is it the societies one, or that's
yeah. So if you just pull up one of them, right? So you can kind of see how it is. If you look in the top of the picture, you also see the outlines of longhouses in above them.
Yep.
So these are placed in strategic locations, at least when it comes to Denmark and southern Sweden. These are built in 12 different locations, or suspected of 12 locations. I only think 9 is confirmed, or is it 8 or something like that. But they have found leftovers from elsewhere too. So that is actually a picture I've taken myself, so people can see how big they actually are. They are pretty big. If you zoom even further in,
sort of the inside of this ring here. Yeah.
So you can even see people in those pictures, and if you zoom in a little bit more, you can see they're like 1/3 of the wall tall. So it's like, I don't know, 5 meters tall earth walls. And you can see that the longhouses are like, what, I don't know, 8-10 meters across on the width, and then along the long sides is like 40 meters or something like that. Could you bring up one of the longhouses so people can see how that looks, like, what that looks like?
While I'm doing that, Leo Borealis, you've been hanging out for a while. Welcome. Feel free to add anything you feel is relevant. Otherwise, if we're going to let JGreenriver sort of set the stage here before
yeah,
I would just say that I'm sorry that I'm late. I was held up in hellish traffic.
Yes.
And go along, JG.
All right, so this is a longhouse. This is from Trelleborg, which is near my hometown. And this, I believe this is a picture I've taken myself. It might not be, but it is of the same longhouse, so it doesn't really matter if I took it or either. So inside a longhouse like this, you would have it divided up in 3 parts. You would have the entrance where you would have what is it called, stock, like animals, and maybe like a warehouse or something like that. And then you would have the centerpiece where you would have a place where you would prepare food in the middle, and you would have the top. The top of the house would be open so the smoke could get out through the middle of the top of the longhouse. And then in the last part, you would have the bedchamber of the family, or of the chieftain or jarl who lived there. A longhouse family consists, of course, of a patrician, and then he would have a wife, and he would have children, etc. But he might also have other people living with him, like freemen and thralls. So the difference between a freeman is a man that is free in the sense of the word, and a thrall is the opposite of that, a man who's not free or a woman who's not free. Now this doesn't necessarily mean slavery. It also includes like apprentices, and so it's more like the Roman way of slavery, or slaves, rather than the American way of slavery. So I don't know. I'm hoping here that people understand the difference between those two. But otherwise, let's put it a different way. It's not chattel slavery in the same way that it was in the US. It's a different form of slavery.
It's more of a. Would you say it's more indentured servitude?
Yes, that's also one of the ways that you could be put into it. Yes, but also just if you have a kid and you want that kid to be a blacksmith, you might send him to the blacksmith, and he would be a thrall as an apprentice there.
Thrall, as it's called in English here, radical centrist. Yes.
Yeah.
Leo, you had something you wanted to add here.
Yes. I think just to give some nuance to explain what JG is trying to say here is that thrall is not the equivalent of slave. Thrall is equivalent of essentially being held in bondage. So the European medieval variant of this would be that you are an apprentice. For example, as JG said, a blacksmith's apprentice, a cobbler's apprentice, whatever apprentice. You are held in bondage as an apprentice for a set number of years of service to learn a trade. That means that you are a thrall. The Society of Scandinavia here makes a very clean distinction between a thrall and a slave, as JG says.
The idea is if you've sort of sworn yourself to the blacksmith as his apprentice, you're
it's a kind of
not your own man, quote unquote, until you're done.
Yeah, you are in a sense, as we would say in modern Scandinavian language, the man who owes is not free. This is the same thing. You owe a debt of servitude, but you are not a slave. And if certain conditions apply, then your oath of bondage is broken. Then you are free to go away, because this was not what you agreed upon. So it's more of a contract rather than slavery.
Yeah, yes, that's a good way to put it. So you have to understand Viking society in dichotomy, right? Like, so you have freemen and you have thralls, and that's where the line is drawn. It's not drawn in chattel slavery like in the US. Okay, so each of the jarls, let's say that a jarl lives in that longhouse, he could perhaps have 10 freemen working for him. These would be carls. And then if you look at that structure, you have a chieftain. He might have a dozen jarls under him. And each of those jarls might have a dozen carls under him, right? So if you do 12 times 12, then you have 144 men. That's what could be in a big Viking ship. So one village would be 1 to 3 Viking ships, depending on the size, right? And these would then take out and raid. And they have a pre-made structure in the chieftain, jarl, and carl set up with the men.
I have a question. Yeah. Do we want to do questions from the audience just as we go here? I'm sure this being like historical stuff, there's going to be a lot of...
Yeah. Go ahead.
Miot Yori asks, didn't you wear a bronze or golden torque to denote being a free man? Here have any?
So I would say no, but they have been found, and if you were a woman, you would if you had a gold torque, you were definitely not a thrall. That much is for sure. I don't know, Leo. Do you have something to contribute?
Yeah, there's a base economic systems from this thing, but it's not really a torque, because torques were within the Scandinavian and Germanic traditions. A torque is more of a ritual objects. You would wear an arm ring, and essentially what you would start out with is that once a household, because we have to go back a little bit to explain this tangent. But the thing is that within Scandinavian society, during both the Bronze and the Iron Age, men do not own property in the sense of houses. A house is always something that a man builds or expands upon a family holding and gives to his wife as the wedding gift. A man owns cattle, horses, ships, weapons. A woman owns, and also land. A woman owns a house that is a dwelling. She owns produce. Very important. She owns all the keys to all the chests that contains all the gold and all the salts. She owns the domestic sphere. Outside that, this is essentially, if we go back to that, the inner circle the woman controls, but the outside circle, the outer body politic, is the exclusive domain of the man.
This is the root of the I should say deliberate misinterpretation, right? Where the sort of quote unquote divorce laws of the Vikings means that, the Nordics have always been feminist or whatever people say.
Yeah, this is actually rather the if we would say the pre-Victorian idea of society that the home is the domain of your wife. You do not gainsay your wife in her kitchen. You have no rights there. Get the fuck out. However, out in public and within the body politic, when it comes to things that exist outside the household, that is the man's domain, because this is essentially, real bioessentialism. The man exists on the fringe, the man and the woman exists at the core, and it is the interplay here. Anyway, back to the rings and the torques. The idea here is that basically when he's starting out and his household has a certain, say, economic weight, the man creates a bronze arm ring for his wife. He commissions a jeweler to make this. Once it goes up into a set amount, he liquidates part of that and creates a silver arm ring for his wife. And once it goes over that, he creates a gold one. And so on it goes. And then you have this large, very intricate clasps that holds a cloak for a woman, that are fist-sized and usually cast and carved. These are in the basic performance are gilded bronze, and then they become gilded silver, and the end for the jarls they are solid gold. So essentially the woman wears the riches of the household on display.
Yeah, so it's a status symbol. It's not necessarily that it follows that gold are free and bronze are trow.
Yeah, and here's also the other thing. This is an important distinction. A man creates from the wealth that they have created together the arm rings and finery of his wife. The arm ring of on the man, however, because an arm ring is not just a decoration; it's a statement of fealty and loyalty supreme. To a man, only a jarl or a king can give him an arm ring, and that is and that represents an oath of fealty. So it's the distinction between a knight and what do you call it? Now I don't remember. Sure. Between a knight and his baron.
Oh, like that.
Okay. Goes into the service and swears oaths of loyalty to his baron, and through the baron to the king. His baron must then in the shape of his jarl or his king, if he is part of the king's hird. Then he will present him in his knighting ceremony a golden arm ring.
Yeah. All right. Well, just to continue, so we'll be done today.
We'll have to keep focused here.
So I'm trying to make the foundation for how do you collect 30,000 Vikings if we are split out into villages of 200 people. And I went on about the chieftain, jarl, and carl structure before. But besides that, you had in each region, you would have a local ting. Now, the ting was set up pretty organically, depending on where the villages was, etc., and whom they were scared of. And they were also scared of their own. So the chieftain would come together at what is called a ting, or a thing in English. If you heard about the recent Schildings event, they called it the Witten. It's kind of similar to that concept. Later on, these things would evolve into what the Anglos call parliaments. And
at least in Norway, the parliament here is called the big thing, literally, like the grand thing.
And in Denmark it's called the people's thing, right? So it has evolved into what you would call parliament, or what you would call parliament elsewhere.
Yeah, and here it also is part of the court, because it's also a judicial system. So what you would call a court in, say, in the Anglo tradition is here called the noun is still the thing, because but it's called like in Sweden, you have the lowest denomination of the courts is the tingsrätt, and that means essentially the thing of rights.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So you have a concept that is a little bit wider, but the reason why I brought them up was because when they came together in these things, they could form, they could elect like a temporary king and then form an army, like the Great Heathen Army, right? So if you imagine that you have multiple regions coming together, you have the chieftain Jarl Karl set up, and you have like 3 ships sailing out, and in the end you end out with like 30 or 50,000 Vikings invading England, right?
Yep.
So that's why I wanted to bring it up. It's important to understand how it was organized.
I got a comment here from Birkarl just to point out that there were no separation of powers here, unlike the modern parliaments.
Yeah, definitely not.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Scandinavian society at this time still retains the divine hierarchy that underpins the divine right of kings. The people, so that our audience understand this, the people who are allowed to speak and bring grievances at the thing were nobility, the higher echelons of warriors and kings and priests. The common folk could bring to their local, then would say part of the hird, the knights, or to his local jarl. He could bring his grievances and ask his local jarl if it was a cross-jurisdictional, because otherwise it was within the lands and jurisdiction of the jarl. He would settle the issue right then and there, and then he could ask him to raise this with his fellow jarls and warriors at the thing. Otherwise, he had no say, because he was not part of that upper strata of the hierarchy. However, a valued peasant would always be allowed, through his jarl or through his local knights, to have his grievance brought before the thing. It was a point of grave injustice and great shame to deny such a thing, because this was a extremely honor-bound and pious society.
Yeah,
personal honor, and in this, not only in the modern context of honor, but this is honor, and your personal record before the gods is paramount. It is everything.
Yes. Yeah. So this system of temporary kings continues all the way up into the 12th and 13th century. So you have like almost 1,000 years where you have what is it called, elected monarchy or something like that.
Question: do we know anything about the process on how they elected these temporary kings?
Yeah, 1 vote per man, right? Per chieftain that arrived at the thing. And then if they have multiple things, then they would send 1 or 2 delegates further on to the next one, if we're talking about some kind of transnational king.
I think Ludwig even recently posted a meme, actually, with some Tavastians at one of these moots things. And, well, you know, you can understand a meme, but you can't get some historical background for it right here.
Yeah, do we have more questions? Or
it is well, I'm not sure if it's relevant really. Lumberg says, is everything in Scandinavia called a thing?
No. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's like Greenland, where the Eskimos have 50 names for snow.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, more or less. I think our is the only parliament that has gone. They changed it in the 1700s to go to the German variant of Reichstag, but that is because everything else was called the thing, and then it was ours was also called it, and there was an idea that we have to make a distinction here, and this was during the part where we were, more or less owning all of the Baltic. So we had northern Germany, parts of Poland, Danzig, the Baltics, Finland. So it was getting tricky administratively. So then it was like the Riksdag, and then it's the Riks is then the equivalent of the German Reich, which is the kingdom, and then you have Dag, which is Tag, which is day. So it's the day of the kingdom where the upper assembly comes together a couple of days per year and decide on the overarching things, and then they go back home to their local jurisdictions.
Yeah. So just to continue here a little bit, I wanted to hit a little bit on the culture there, but my friend Leo here has already spoiled it, right? It's an honor culture. And it was a very piteous, I don't know what it's called.
Pietistic.
Pietistic. I think it is.
Society, and like we could start bringing out the guards, etc., right? But watch a Marvel movie and then you got it. So there's no need for that. But one thing that I think is often missed is the concept of a wolf, right? Which is like a female archetype and kind of like a cult leader, which you don't really see elsewhere. It's like a female priestess, sorcerer. And maybe you could compare it a little bit to the gypsy fortune tellers, or maybe a little bit to the Oracle of Delphi, perhaps a mix between the two.
It's some strange sort of shamanistic oracle archetype.
That is combined. Young and female and old at the same time. So
yeah, you have the concept within in the European tradition, and then within the Greek mythology of the Fates, which are also a trinity of a Vestal Virgin, a woman in her prime, and the crone.
Yeah,
and it goes back way back beyond the Ice Age. I mean, it's really old in the European concept.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just see. I have to scroll over some of the stuff I had here because Leo took it from me.
Are you looking at the idea of the one that is within contemporary Mediterranean sources named the Angel of Death?
No. I was there was just the honor. I had a little bit about that, but I think we covered that pretty well. So
if you want to, we can start with sort of the timeline stuff that probably Leo has prepared, and you can add your own as you see fit. You want to do that?
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about the attitude, because funny enough, Vikings were probably a lot more egalitarian than we would like as right-wingers. For instance, there is a story about how Danish Vikings went to Charlemagne. The Charlemagne that conquered half of the Saxons, etc. They went to him, and they were ordered to kneel and then kiss his boot. But the leader of the Danish Vikings refused, and instead grabbed his boot from the ground and took it up to his lips, and in the process they dangled him upside down. So there is a story of Danish Vikings dangling the great and famous Charlemagne upside down.
For everyone who is into pop culture, this is Rollo, also known as his epithet, the Walker, because he was like almost 7 feet tall and therefore famously couldn't ride a horse especially well because, well, his feet was dangling down because horses were a bit smaller back then.
Yeah. And so this is the attitude that just because you are a jarl doesn't mean that you are better than a carl or a chieftain for that matter. And like it's not a nobility question that you have this structure.
You say that's from the honor culture where sort of you have to earn your right to have your say. Like you just don't get it automatically because it's not hereditary.
Yeah, exactly. It's something we don't have today, so it's very hard to explain.
Well, it is also, I would like to say that it's partially hereditary, but not in a sanguinary way. So it is quite often that jarls or kings who does not have sons that are of material, say they are good for other things. They are great scholars, priests, holy men, but they produce no viable kings. It is then a long tradition to find a great warrior, a leader of men, and adopt him into the bloodline to become secondary. Because this is also a part of the honor culture. The honor culture is also religious. The gods see and know everything. You can't lie to the gods, and therefore you should not lie to yourself. There's no shame of being a son of a king and not being a leader of men. That is all right, but that means also that you should absolutely not try to lead, because that will lead your community, yourself, and the honor of your ancestors into ruinations. Better be a priest, better be a scholarly man, or the best fucking warrior, but not a leader that everyone has seen. Yeah. That is to bring honor to your family. The greatest dishonor is to try to be something that you are not. You may try, you may fail, and when you fail, the gods have humbled you. You should know your place, you should learn from this mistake, and you should know better in the future.
Yeah. So just for the merchants out there, I had a little bit about bartering here. Vikings or Scandinavians in general did not have a currency. However, they did grab like Roman coins, etc., and use them instead. But the main way to settle barter was in that they had like small silver bars, and the silver bars you can break small pieces of them, and they had very good weight, so they could adjust what was being bought. I think they could measure it properly, so they write them out.
The weight in silver, literally.
Yeah, they could measure down to grams with those weight. So you would just set how much silver are you supposed to pay for, let's say 40 chickens or whatever, and then 20 grams. Then you would put the weight for 20 grams, and then put the silver on one side, right? I don't know if it was 20 grams or 200 grams or whatever, but the principle is that they use silver bars where you could break it off if necessary, and then you could remelt it into new silver bars at the blacksmith or whatever. So, or keep it broken if you needed it. But it was just a principle that they kind of had a coin system, but it wasn't actual coins, right? It was those silver bars. So they probably didn't have a need for it, but once they saw coins, they brought them home and used them instead.
Regarding coins, some of the earliest the first coins that have been found in Estonia, Finland, and I think Sweden in some cases, generally the through the eastern route were actually Islamic coins. The Islamic expansion happening in 700s, 800s, riding out, and these coins wound up all the way in Scandinavia too, and literal future Quranic Arabic inscriptions on the coins, and these are the first coins, the earliest coins found in, for example, southern Finland.
Yeah, in late Hedeby, a mint is set up as well, so that's probably in the 10th century or something like that. We get our first mint in Denmark.
This is also a reason why the Islamic coins show up here, is because from the Black Sea and Volga trade routes. The thing was with the Byzantine Empire that the Byzantine Empire had a policy to retain their own coinage when dealing with foreign merchant. That means that the expelled foreign coins that were in their trade systems whenever possible. So this meant that, and at this point, the Italian leagues did not accept Islamic coinage, so they had a surplus, and that Islamic coinage went into return trade with the emergent caliphate, but also into the Black Sea trade system, because people there were just like, silver is silver. What about it?
Right. I just had
Oh yeah, go ahead.
bit of a meme in my head. You guys know the the like boys with a time machine template? I just imagine some Viking guy like picking up a couple of Islamic coins on his adventures, and then some guy pops out of a time portal to be like, "Don't take that back home. You don't know what you're doing."
They're gonna use this against your people.
Yeah. So I think we have covered the culture, like how it was set up, etc. All right now we are almost an hour in. So if Leo is gonna have time to talk about some conquest and so on, it's probably time to give him that room, and then we can go back to like games and so on if we want to do that.
Yeah, I think we should, just let him rip, and you guys can just add commentary as you see fit, right?
Well,
let's just
since
just
we're
interrupt him.
Since we're getting into conquest, I would first like to talk about how the conquest was done. I mean, in a lot of cases, sailing. So maybe
sure.
quick primer on the sailing thing. I sent you the.
You sent me two maps.
Yeah, I'd like to start out with just a basic map, and
okay, so a map without any graphics on it.
No, it's just the map you showed at the start, for example.
Oh yeah.
Of Europe.
Let's see.
So we now know. I think one of the maps Leo has shows the where all the expansions happened and the dates and all. But just looking at the map, you wouldn't expect this projection. Well, I guess there's some sort of curvature on this map, so it's not complete Mercator or whatever the name of the flat projection is, but it is a bit counterintuitive that people didn't really go down south directly, for example, straight to France, and most of the sailing happened, up to straight towards Scotland instead. But if we show the second map and we show how the sailing actually went with the Arctic direction. So there we go. I've drawn some dots there. Ignore the red ones. This is taken from some other source. So if we can see here, there's a big, almost a highway right here along the coast, straight to the British Isles. And the other thing that we remember here is that there is the thing called the Gulf Stream and Coriolis winds that come directly pushing northeast. So it could seem to some people that sailing in this direction would be hard, but actually this makes it much easier and much quicker to sail in this direction, because of how sailing basically works. And this highway was fueled through this machination of sailing. Going through to Iceland, for example, or Greenland and so on, that was completely arduous, even though the distance isn't that much longer, and it's not that much about the depth.
Because
It's
you're
mainly
just in sort of like pure open sea, is that it?
Well, there is that, but mostly it's about how quickly you can sail. So if we bring out the boat diagram.
Boat diagram. Sorry, which one is that?
Well, it's just a picture with the boat and the winds going.
Did you send me a picture
Yeah, it's
of
on.
a boat? Oh, here it is. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
1 second. Let me just bring that up here.
So this is a standard boat. Now you can see the winds coming in. It's not directly from the front because sailing completely directly into the wind is not possible. But if we see the sail here, it's at an angle, so the wind is coming in, and you would think that you would use the sail, it's pretty easy to sail directly into the wind and just have it push you, but that is actually quite slow. I mean, it gets you there with almost zero effort and you don't have to really do anything. But if you put the work in, you can use this the sail basically just how like an airplane wing works. So you see the wind coming in straight into the sail, and on the outside edge the air moves faster, just like on an airplane wing.
You like cut along the side of the wind instead, if that's the way to
exactly.
put it. Yeah,
and that causes that lift you see right there.
I mean, for anyone who's ever done sailing, there's a noticeable difference when sort of you hit that sweet spot.
Yeah. But there's a problem. You would, of course, go directly rightwards at a 45-degree angle.
Yes.
But that's where the keel comes in. And the keel causes a counter push, meaning that basically, I think it's something like a 40-degree angle. I might be wrong. I don't remember the exact angle. But at somewhat of an angle into the wind is actually the fastest sailing you will ever do.
Right.
So this also fueled this mega highway straight down Norway into the Britain and made it super easy to
because the winds made it easy to get that consistently.
Well, to basically patrol the territory, do whatever you wanted.
Yeah. Very nice. So that's how a lot of them ended up in England and northern France. Leo, do you want to take it away? Am I dead? Hello?
No, you're fine.
Oh.
No, it's my mute button that I forgot about. Yes. Since we are on to the idea of sailing before we go into the conquest, we should look at the material. I gave you a couple of pictures of boats.
Yes. Which one would you like first? The construction one, or? No,
can you take the one from the Oseberg?
That is the one with color, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the one here we can see. There are, at this era, there are two types of ships. Both are created from the basic templates of the so-called deer spring boat, that is stretched frame on timbers with a high prow and a high rear. Essentially, it's much like the Viking ship, quote unquote. It has the same prow as it has the rear. It can go essentially then both ways in the similar way. Unlike, for example, a trireme, which has a flat
one
and
side,
blocky rear and a smooth inverted prow almost with a ram. That was quite common during this era. The Romans also used trireme style ships as an example. The reason I took this is from the Oseberg burial ship that was discovered in in the 1880s by a farmer outside, a little bit outside Oslo, I think, Oseberg.
Yes.
And well, this is a land ship burial.
Find is like considered like the largest Viking find.
No, there is the Ormen Lange from Denmark.
Yes.
That is, Oseberg is 23 meters long. The Ormen Lange is like 35.
Right. Okay.
It's a partial fire burial, so it's not as well preserved.
Right.
But this is a land burial ship, so this is a ship that has been placed inside a burial mound. So, well, the mount itself then have been swallowed up during 1,000 years of soil aggregation, of course. So it was more by like a slight hill when the farmer who found it started clearing and plowing the ground. But the original mound would have been, because then the ship itself would have been at ground level. So the original burial mound would have been larger than the hall that you are witnessing now. This is a kind of good shot because it shows both the clinker style of the boarding of the ship and how low it is, because you would say the water line would have been at those two plank lines of horizontal. That's how low it sits in the water. And this is an ocean-going vessel.
Yes.
The reason that it can be ocean-going is from the clinker-style construction, because in a normal ship of the time, and also after, for that matter, like a 3-mast, 2-gun deck man of war from the 16th century of the Great British Imperial Navy. You have the bones of it, and then the planks are layered on top of it in the same way that you would construct a wall. They don't overlap. Within the clinker-style building construction, you have smaller, say the ribs of the ship is smaller. The planks overlap, and this allows that in a later ship construction, the keel is rigid. So when you hit waves, if the prow goes left, the rear of the ship goes left. If it goes right, then it will bend the right way, and this makes the ship very susceptible to breakage and damage to both the midsection and the keel in an event of high seas and very difficult weather. This does not happen in a clinker-style longship because there is no linkage. The only thing that links them is the keel. This means that the prow can flex to starboard at the same time as the rear of the ship flexes to the other side. So you can essentially have like a 43-degree angle between the upper parts of the like the dragon head and the tail of the prow and the rear. It makes for an extremely flexible. This is how you have the kennings of the Eddas and the sagas of how the ship is like a sea snake that slithers along the waves, because that is literally how it acts in high seas. It just goes.
It just cuts through waves and then carries on.
Yeah, it doesn't go up and crash. It just slithers in and around. And there's a variant of this. The smaller ships that are up to 20 meters, usually around 15 and 20 meters, that is called the Knarr. They are essentially the same boat, but they are made for trading. So the outer ridge that we see here, that is only 2 planks high, is here perhaps instead a meter and a half high, and you can put on a top deck. And that is because it's not built for speed. It is not built to carry men, and it's not really designed to go that far up river systems. It's a trading vessel. It's meant to carry heavier cargo, and thus it is not need to go quite as light, because you can see here also how light this would go in a river. This ship can go into waters less than, if you're really pushing it, 3 to 4 feet deep.
Yeah, you could get it quite far inland.
That
would be great.
Into very small and shallow estuaries. So this is really a.
It's almost like it was made for invading England.
And France. Let's not forget about France.
Yeah, sure. Just sail up the rivers and
one that is that is the construction one, so people can see the top down from the inside.
I'll bring it up. Here we go.
This is halfway through the construction of a modern ship that is called the Dragon Harald Hårfagre, or Harald Fairhair, named after a Norwegian king. So this is a modern reconstruction using the same materials and construction.
The king who, should we believe the stories, is the one who unified Norway under one banner.
Indeed. And here you can see how the deep prow is made. So you have, these are solid blocks. These are not composite things. These are cross sections of an entire tree. On top of these keel blocks, you put another set of blocks, but with a little bit of air between them, that goes out into that broad boarding sides that we saw earlier. So this is the deep keel still. But here you can see how it is the boarding planks overlapping are held by a dual systems of thick wooden pegs and bog iron nails. Because bog iron has this interesting thing that bog iron is what you scoop up from the bottom of a peat bog. And the material composition of bog iron makes that it is extremely resistant to salt corrosion, because it contains a number of rare earth minerals and other things so it is soft but hard. Which means that it's flexible. So it bends from torsonic forces. It does not shatter, and also salt it doesn't
Road.
It just it creates essentially like a dark rust on the outside, and that's it.
Right.
So you can still find from ship burials with bog iron nails. You can still reuse the nails to this day, and they have been at the bottom of the sea for 1,500 years.
Now, I have seen, this looks like quite a, you could say, quote unquote, modern construction of this, but I have seen museums where they do the old style, like the ancient style of constructing this, and making one of these things seems almost insane. Like the amount of work that goes into creating these giant sort of bendy planks is quite something.
Hey, you need that's also a thing, that you use different types of wood for the boarding, and you use different types of wood for the keel and stuff like that. So you want a different strength and flexibility in different parts of the ship.
Yeah.
Certain parts are not supposed to move that much, and then you tend to use oak, or in some cases, if it's a massive part, like the block that holds the mast, tended to be, if you couldn't find usually that one was made in birch, because birch is very hard, but it has that small problem that it is susceptible to moisture. So it was, but however, the thing was that it was so we usually used birch root for the root block that held the mast, because remember, in all the long ships, the mast is you can put it out and put it down.
Yeah.
So it's not a solid fixture like in a tall ship from the 1600s and 1700s. It is something that literally sits down in there in a clasp close down to the keel,
Yeah.
but you can take it down.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about how I've read often that the triremes that the Greeks and Romans used, they often used ramming tactics to literally break the ships in the Mediterranean. Yeah. But how good would that be against these bendy ships?
Not at all. The thing is that with the trireme usage, it's actually old from the Greek, and it's the oldest proto-triremes come from from the Bronze Age, from Crete, that has the first idea about the trireme style of ship. From the what is that one called? It's the Minoans that the Greeks reiterate upon, and then that the Romans are like the last iteration upon the Greek trireme.
Yeah, so basically trying to ram one of these things is just an invitation to be boarded.
More or less, it would go bonk. It would ride up until because it lies so shallowly in the water, and the trireme is intended to hit a ship with a deep keel.
You can sink it by putting your own ship on top of it.
Yeah, and the slope of the trireme, of the nose of the prow that holds the ram, is.
Let me bring up a trireme here.
It's kind of long and kind of a slight slope. So if you rammed one of these, it will just ride up upon it, and then the guys who were where they were rammed would just be able to step out of their thing onto the prow deck of the trireme. So it wouldn't work at all. The thing is that the trireme as a construction is very rigid in a sideways. And it needs to be that, and this is why that you can take that hit from the prow, because the rest of the construction is very rigid. The thing, and that is also why you want to ram, because this was also much a case of triremes ramming other triremes. It is long, it is rigid, and it's intended to go into a very calm sea. Remember, the Mediterranean compared to the North Atlantic is a very calm sea. You don't have the kind of weather and waves in the Mediterranean that you have in the North Sea. So this construction, you can see the prow there, but this is without the ram would go out like 5-6 meters in front of it. The thing is that a trireme is very susceptible to, as you might have guessed, ramming from the flanks. It will literally just break it into pieces. So this is why
rigid.
Yeah, because since it needs the rigidity to do the ramming itself, it is also highly susceptible to being rammed in turn.
Yeah, it's then again, like hitting a tank from the side or behind.
Yeah, something like that.
Extrapolated a couple of magnitudes, but yes.
Yeah, well, while going at the, it's like, well, you take a log and boop a snake that is swimming. It will go sideways and go, huh?
Well, yeah.
It will just move with the movement, more or less.
Eat the force.
Yeah, and this is also a thing that a trireme, the sailing technique that Birkarl just showed, where you're essentially sailing against the wind, a trireme can't do that.
Right, because it's too.
It doesn't have the sail arrangement or the hull to make that kind of move. So if the wind is unfavorable, it doesn't move, and it has to get up.
It's not made for the same types of winds either.
No, absolutely not.
So I have a question here from Death by Cognitive Dissonance. What's the max occupancy for such a ship? I assume he means the long ships.
It's around 150 for the long ships. Those for war. That's why it fitted perfectly with the Birkarl setup.
Right, so you had your 150 guys, and you all got in the same boat.
Exactly, but that was the biggest boat. You also had smaller boats, so you might have like one of those Chieftain Birkarl setups in like 3 or 5 boats, right? Where you only have like 30 in each or something. But in the biggest was 150.
Yeah. So if you take one of the small trading ships, and remember now we're talking about one of the fat and slow variants of this. It's like on average 5.5 meters long, 4.5 meters wide. It has a fording depth of 1.2 meters. At full load, it has a fording depth of 1.5 meter. It has a water displacement around 25-26 tons. And it takes about 35 cubic meters and or 20 tons of cargo. It has a 90 to 100 square meters of sail. And this is in a single sail. And it goes around 12 to 15 knots in a mild wind.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it only has 4 pairs of oars. And remember, this is a trading vessel. This is a cargo ship.
I was going to say, I mean, if anyone wants to steal your stuff, you can pretty much just glide away. They can't catch up to you unless they have the same type of vessel.
No, it's very fast for the time for being a trading vessel, and this is also why you have this the trading networks down into France, down into Spain. It doesn't take that many Danes for how many Danes? That many days for say a Danish trader to load up with pelts, white winter pelts, amber, preserves, and all of the good stuff. To go from say somewhere in Denmark and all the way down to Spain, it takes 4 days. Doesn't take any longer if he has favorable winds, of course. But he doesn't go on that journey unless it is season for favorable winds.
Obviously.
So
I think Lundberg wanted a correction here. How fast? You said 12 to 15 knots. Was that correct?
Yeah. A fully laden cargo ship on medium winds would do 12 to 15 knots.
You're going to have to do the conversion like nautical stuff because I know that number by feel. I can't translate that into anything, on land. Let's see here. You have one other picture of a ship.
Yeah, I think, let's say here, a knot is like 120 nautical miles per hour. What is that in what is that in kilometers?
I think that's 1.8 or something.
Yeah, 1.85. So that's around 30 kilometers per hour.
At max speed, obviously.
Yeah, no median speed. It can, of course, go faster.
Median
but
speed.
Okay. That's a median speed with that amount, because if it goes, if the winds are harder, you will draw in the sail to not stress both the sail and the structure and all of that. But if you really need to go faster, you can. But you're just going, on a 5-day trip to Hispania. What the fuck would you risk anything?
Yeah, exactly.
There's also that. And now remember that the warships are more sturdily constructed, they are lighter, and they are made for speed.
Yeah.
So you have the
snakes.
Yeah, so you have say on a median good day on the North Sea, the long snake, the king's ship from Denmark that is 36 meters long or something like that, would take 180 men. That thing would do, around maybe 40 kilometers per hour. We're talking like, say, a racing sail catamaran, more or less. It would just fly through the. And this comes back from some of the sagas and the area that you can actually make the transit from southern Norway to northern England to the Danelaw in a day. You go in the morning and you arrive in the morning.
And you have to remember, I mean, at the years we're talking here, like the time we're talking, I mean, for the Vikings, very few other people could rival them, at least in speed here, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have this kind of ship construction outside of Scandinavia and the Baltic, and sure, the Angles and the Frisians, who are kin groups, also have similar, but they don't have the same size of ships. It's more like 8-9 meter, fishing boats and small cargo vessels, but not of the same sophistication.
Yeah, Vingel here is
they are less nautically oriented people.
Yeah, Vingel here is raising some stink about Ormenlange, which is the name of the ship we're talking about here. He's saying it was a Norwegian ship owned by Olav Tryggvason.
No, the most famous one is the Dane, but the longest one is the Danish one, and it has the same name.
Ah, okay.
Because it's a big, and the Kennig for a warship is often a snake, a serpent, or a dragon.
These ones in particular, I assume, are referring to the Midgardsormr himself.
Yeah, more or less, because the Kennig is there because the Jormungandr sleeps in the sea. It's not on land, and therefore the Kennig that the other one is that it's the horse that rides the storm and foam and stuff like that. That is where the Kennings go, but it tends to either be a nautical horse or a serpent. And then, of course, the Kennig 1 times removed from the long serpent is, of course, Jormungandr itself. So what else would the High King ride on the sea?
Of course. Only the king and Thor ever bested the serpent, right?
Yeah, I see. Vingel is correct here. Tryggvason is said to have been 45 meters, but it's not confirmed.
I think that's only in like sagas. Yeah, I don't think that's been confirmed.
Yeah. No, there isn't a ship like that, but the Danish ship is 35, and we know that they have found remnants that if you extrapolate from parts of the prow and the prow boarding or parts of the keel from the size of it, because they are very consistent in shape. If you extrapolate out of that, you will come up to 45-50 meters for the largest ships. But from those ships, they have only found fragments. They have not found whole ships. The Danish one is the largest whole ship where we have the entire keel preserved.
Yeah, that's insane. All right, I just want to...
I don't know, JG, what would that be? 50-55 meters? How many men would you fit on that? I mean, you can fit 150 men on 30 meters.
I don't know about that, but I'm told it was 150, or I've read it was 150. That was maximum on Viking ships, on the big ships.
Let me see if I can find a video here of someone sailing 20 knots. Because I just want to illustrate what the poor Parisians saw. You see here, 20 knots sailing speed. There's not a lot online here. gunboat. Oh, this is all like military stuff. All right, we'll do this. So this is a boat sailing 20 knots. So we're assuming that this is the warships, right? Is that correct, Birkarl? I mean, Leo.
I have a sailing video. I can link it to you.
Oh, I think I found one. I just need to wait for the ads. There we go. So this is a boat going. Let me find it here. They had like a shot here. This is going about 20 knots. And you assume that, one day this thing rolls up at 20 knots on the coast off the distance with like 50 guys ready to fuck your shit up. That would be the experience, right?
Yeah, I mean the idea that if you would ever see like a recreation graphic from like 500 million English men have made documentaries about the raid on Lindisfarne, and you always see this like, oh, it's like kind of a, oh, and they're coming over there, and you see, what's that? That's a lot of boats, and that's weird boats, and they're coming along like slow boat style. That wasn't really what was happening. It was coming 20-25 knots at speed from an east to westerly wind, because that's in that season how it blows over the North Sea. It comes from the east to the west.
Yeah.
And riding on they are like these fucking absolute morons, and it's not one ship, it's not 20 ships, it's quite a few more. And so you don't tell me that it's not just unfamiliar people, it's not just unfamiliar ships. They are going fast. It's like seeing that you have never seen anything going faster than say a 1920s car. One of those stately Bentleys that does like 20 miles an hour, and are kind of wobbly, and out of fucking nowhere comes a Toyota Corolla rally car sliding through the road, and drifting at 80 miles per hour around the bend, and it's not one of them, it's 50. So the monks were not going, that's weird. They were going, what the fuck is going on?
All right. So you have one more pictures of ships here. Do you want to show that, or should we go?
This one. This is a replica that was sent over at the back in the day. We have these entirely really Western and very interesting ideas that were the World's Fair, that were in Paris, London, New York, and in let's see, it's in 1893, made by donations from Scandinavians. A shipbuilding company in Norway made a complete, full and saleable replica, the first replica of the Jakstad's ship,
right,
from a ship burial, and got a crew and sailed it across the Atlantic from Norway to America, and then it was transported via barge to Chicago, to the World Fair in Chicago.
Yep.
So this idea of and remember, this is in 1893. There are no following boats. There are no GPS. There's just nothing. There's 30 guys and a map and a compass, and you are going in spring from Norway to Virginia, or wherever the fuck they were landed. I don't remember. It was New York or Virginia. I don't remember. Any case, so these ships are very seaworthy.
Yeah. It's so weird because you watch them like here you don't see how they would like ever survive open waters and the waves, right? But then you see footage of one actually just sort of like the way they sort of slice through the waves and barely move is very cool.
Yeah, they have this, especially when they move at speed, because the faster they go, the higher they ride. They rise out of the water. So when they go really fast, it's only like the keel and the planks nearest where it looks almost like it flies on top of the water. It's really fucking cool. A bit eerie as well, because it's almost something, you watch them and you say, it shouldn't do that. It should be in the water, not out of the water.
See here. Okay, next up, I have a couple of maps that you sent me.
Yes, you can take the colored one. That is the GPS kind of thing.
This one or the other one?
It's this one. I think this is a good start. Because here you can see this one has a couple of dates on it, and here you can see the primary trade routes of the Norwegians, Danes, and Swedes. And the green blocked out parts are then, if you will, Scandi holdings within this area. They have not taken part of Miklagard and the part of the Volga trade network from the that would eventually become the Kiev and Rus and stuff like that, because that was a little bit later and hard to define. But here you can see from the east you have into the Lake Ladoga and Volga, and then you go off into the Caspian trade, into the Far East.
From the numbers here, is this like dated discoveries that link?
No, that's confirmed dates where you have where it started.
That's what I mean. Oh, where they started. Okay.
Yeah. These were also existing trade networks that existed way as we took on that we talked in at during the last stream, Scandinavian History 1, during the Bronze Age. The Caspian trade network, the Volga, the Dnieper, and into the Black Sea, that existed for thousands of years. But since all the trading partners kind of crashed and stopped existing, with the exception of Egypt, in the southern Mediterranean, in Anatolia, and the Greek, and that trading system collapsed during the famed Bronze Age collapse era. Well, we didn't have anyone to trade with, so it kind of went defunct for a couple of 500-600 years until it started up again. But the Caspian trade lived on for almost 200-300 years after the Bronze Age collapse. But then it started up again in the early 800s, and we have confirmed archaeological data, carbon dated to 1880, on the Caspian Sea itself. That has come from Scandinavia, but probably it didn't take 60 years from the trade in the Ladoga from the early 800s to go all that way. It was probably perhaps the same year or years later, but we just haven't found the datable records for that. So.
Yeah,
it is always it's how far and deep it has been dug and what you have found as well. So it's
yeah. Still, it's pretty far back. Some of these are like late 700s, right?
Yeah, I mean you have the earliest one here that we essentially, in the cultural record, or how we want to call it, that the quote-unquote Viking Age is usually put down at the start of the raid at the monastery of Lindisfarne on the 8th of June 793. you usually put a hard edge between the Vendel era and the Viking Age at that point. Of course, it's really ridiculous to do that, but you need to, put a point somewhere.
At some point, you gotta end one thing and start another, just for record keeping.
Yeah, and it's really the first major raid that comes out of Denmark and southern Norway into the English Isles. And this then precipitates into further and further raids into the kingdom of Wessex and East Anglia. And over a course of 100 years, essentially puts southern England under Danish rule, and half of Scotland. In this case, almost part of Scotland was still Pict land, because Scotland wasn't really formed that way. And southern Scotland under Norwegian rule, because the Norwegians went to Ireland, northern Scotland, and the Isles in the North Sea, so Orkney, Shetland, and the Isles, as they called it in Scotland. And we have an interesting thing that happens in Ireland is essentially a mirror of what happens 600 years later in Mesoamerica, when the Spaniards show up in the Aztec Empire. As the meme goes, I'm sorry, but the human sacrifices will stop. Giga Chad. That's more or less what happens in Ireland when the Norwegians and the Danes show up. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? No more of that bullshit.
To be fair, the Vikings did have what we called blut, which is sacrifices, but they were never human.
Yeah, they were human, but they had... Okay,
I thought they never did human sacrifices. Okay,
no, there are human sacrifices. There's one human sacrifice that happens at the burial of a king or a jarl or a great man of great renown. But here is the difference, because that again, we will come back to this idea of the psychology and the social culture and religion of these people. What happens during a burial sacrifice is that a thrall or a slave girl will be asked from the jarl's many thanes and not thanes, that's a Scottish term, his slaves and indentured and thralls. They will ask for a volunteer, and someone always, for some reason, volunteers to join the king in in the afterlife. And this person is then always in the context of a ship burial, or if you go in the Vendel era, where this starts, a stone burial mount burial, where at the apex of the burial station, the slave that is to be, or thane, or sometimes actually just a volunteer, like a lover or something. It happens that there's one apocryphal record where a nobleman's like second daughter or something essentially just kicks one of the slave girls to the ground and say, "No, I will be the sacrifice because I loved him. You didn't. Fuck off."
Wow.
Yeah, and again, it's within the context of the saga. So, but myth is truth, and so on. It surely happened, and there are levels to that. But the end of that is the priestess that is one of the what you would say, incarnating in her role as the priestess, the one of the Norns, the crone, the one that cuts the thread of fate, essentially the angel of death, as the Byzantines said it in their records of what happened. Slits the throat and lays the the sacrifice on the arm, at the chest, and the side of the fallen king or warrior. The other one is every 9th year at the High Temple of Odin. 9 sacrifices of every species. 9 times 9 are sacrificed. And at this is also the only sacrifice to the gods that is of men. And again, these sacrifices are all volunteers.
All volunteers, okay.
Yes, and these men are, you hang horses, you hang cows, you hang sheep, you hang other things with their throats slit from the great sacrificial oath before the temple, to the glory of Odin. These sacrifices, however, they must always be male, and they don't have their throat slit. They are hung from the oak alive, and they are not hung like criminals which drop. They have the noose around their neck, and then they are lifted up, and then they are pierced by a spear. So they die in the image of the All-Father, and it's their families are honored, and so on and so on. It's a very rare and a special honor, and it took, of course, a certain kind of people. These people also tended not to be slaves. There was also that people who, in the extant record, it was not unknown that old warriors who had lived beyond their years, all their friends had died in battle. They had not. They had survived everything. They had failed to die on the field of battle. They would try to live long enough to volunteer as sacrifices to die upon the branches of the oak pierced by a spear.
Okay. Yeah.
So this was, I tried to die in glory. I fucking failed.
Alternate way into Valhalla. Yes.
More or less, it's like and this was kind of common that old, and this is why you must understand that this was in a way also a ritualistic way out for people who were, well, so fucking good warriors that they just wouldn't die in battle, because you must also realize you can't cheat. Here we come into the honor culture. To die in battle is a great honor, and so on and so forth. However, you can't just do a kayfabe and go, "Oh no, I dropped my sword."
No,
that doesn't work.
I remember reading something at some point of like the samurai doing something similar. Like if they ended up not being killed by someone and they got too old, that the honor would be stained. Because they would be too easy, right? Because they're too old.
It's come from the spiritualistic side of Shinto religion. Not the Buddhist part, but the old Shinto spiritualist religion that was very very influential on Bushido. They had also this idea similar to the Norse Germanic tribes and the Indo-Europeans that it was the height of dishonor almost for a professional warrior to not die in battle.
Yeah.
And of course, that kind of society must find an outlet for the warriors who are either so lucky or so skilled that they don't die. They become old and gray and bent, and what worse way to die from that, like of infirmity, and with eyes that doesn't see, with hands that can't grasp. It's the height of shame and dishonor.
Another comparison that comes to mind with this suicide ritual is the Roman devotio.
Yes, indeed.
Where the general or leader would first perform a religious ritual to grant his army victory, and then basically suicidally charge into battle. And as long as he was killed, his forces would be granted victory by the gods, because he would charge into the thick of it without regard for actually covering himself, just out there to do as much damage as possible.
Yeah, it's to relate to all the Zoomers in the chat. The latest Mad Max, the equivalent of the Mad Max charge, where they spray their teeth in chrome and scream, witness me, gods." And everyone else does that thing, and they do a suicidal shit, and then they die. It's kind of a really, really interesting thing that they put in that there. It's a good movie.
All right, let's keep this moving because we're almost at 2 hours, and we probably have a lot more to get through. You gave me another map here. Oh, before that, we have a couple of questions. Hang on.
Yeah. I think
Ultra Radical Centrist says, "Will you guys mention the Blokumen? Dark Ages Romanians were on that Sigma grind. For reference, Blokumen were Dark Ages Vlachs encountered by Norsemen that went Viking near the territory of former Dacia and the Danube." Any comments?
There is. If you would say that you have the Blåmän, som är den blue men in modern English, was what the Norse called the Moors and the North Africans that they encountered in Spain and Constantinople. The idea here is that this is the Dacians and the Valakhs were, well, they weren't really, Nigs and Turks, but they were on the way, swarthy in a way that was uncommon in the north. So that is why you have this kind of, not all the way, but you see how the verb is bent, that it touches upon the idea of something that is blue, and blue in the Scandinavian context, it is not the color of the sky; it is the color of the sea. Yeah. So it's a dark blue, almost black. Mm-hmm. So but I also think this is a good format for all of this, to take more questions from the chat, because everyone has done the Viking Age. Everyone has seen a million bad or semi.
I had a Q&A thing open. If people have any questions, just dump it in there, or you can ask them in the chat.
I see here that they are making the idea of the later idea into the 1600s about Blåkulla and the witches, and this is also the reason why it's called Blåkulla as a blue hill. This is from the older kenning, because it's really aspiring for something that is black as the sea, black as the night. But you can see it against the dark of the sky, so it's a little lighter.
Yeah. I have a comment here from. I'll try to do a thing. Because he mentions, right now I'm reading Egil Skallagrimsson, and I will definitely check on this video again when I can. I might be able to recite the Old Norse Egil Skallagrimsson. Did they use that for the Vikings show? Like they made like an English translation of it?
I don't know.
Let me see here. I haven't seen the show, so I know that there's like a song made for it that was lifted from Egil Skallagrimsson, and I think it goes something like "Dat melti min moðir att mer skyldig kaupa blei och fagrar årar bara brott med vikingum standa uppi stafni dyra dyrum knarri halda maybe I need to halda sva hafnar hogva man och annan." My Old Norse isn't very good, but I think that's the pronunciation.
It's good enough. I mean, I think I remember something. It might be Fever Ray did the title lead. They may have made one of those. I don't know. Quite possibly, not the title lead.
That's a bit of Walrus trying to speak Norse for you guys in the chat. We have some more images. If people have questions, dumb questions, JGreenriver does have a lot of research on Viking games. Some of you might have heard some of that on episode 38, but we'd like to do a proper dive into that. So if you want to talk a bit about Viking games,
good. Then I'll get a glass of water so I can talk more.
Yeah, I can talk about Viking games. So do you have the pictures ready?
I have the pictures ready. Just tell me which one you want.
Awesome. Let's
it's not like Skyrim. It's like games as in, board games they played.
Yeah.
Games the Vikings themselves played.
Yes, exactly. Games that was played by the Vikings. Yes, exactly. Hifnaf Tafel, like Vingol is saying. That is one of them.
Yes.
That is like it's kind of like chess. However, the rules have been lost over time. But there is versions that are being played today. But the original game was played with a dice, and nobody knows what the dice is used for today. So we are playing it today without the dice, and so there is a couple of versions of it. The most normal
we're on Hnef Tuffle, right?
Yeah, we are exactly. So that's a small one. You can kind of see it outline like a chessboard on that one, but there is a better one. I added a better one today to the folder. So let me see what's called. I think it's called in parentheses 2. I think that was the one. Yeah.
Okay. The other
Hneftafel.
Is that it? Hneftafel.
Hneftafel. Yeah.
That is very difficult for me to say.
Yeah. So this is one of the variant. In this variant, you have the white party has a king in the middle, and the goal is to get your king out of the ambush that is happening. There's also another variant where there's just two sides that are set up against each other, and then it's about getting your king to the opposite side of the board.
Right.
And apparently, never mind. So that's the goal. So there is also the Hneftafel stone. Could you bring that out? We have like rune stones where people playing it.
Yeah.
Are depicted from 1,000 years ago, and you can kind of see that they're playing the middle variant, right, where there's a king that needs to come out, right. That's the playing, but it looks like he's going from if you look at the board, you can see that he has to get up to one of the corners in order to escape, right. So that's the game they're playing there. Then we have if you click on the unknown game, because that is actually a picture I've taken myself. Nobody knows what this game is.
That's a JGreenriver face reveal there.
Yeah. That's me having fun. So the game here is that you have this lamppost thing with a rope down, and in the end of this rope you have like a Thor's hammer, in leather, and then you have to swing swing the hammer in order to knock all 4 of the men down with one swing.
You have to swing it and like sort of use the pendulum effect to hit everything in one go. Yeah,
exactly. And let's see, what else do we have? We have one of the few sports, one of the few games that are still played is Glima of Fang, and that is a kind of wrestling that is still performed in Iceland. It goes all the way back to the Viking Age. That's not it. I didn't actually bring any picture because it's a kind of wrestling.
Ah, okay.
And it's called Glima of Fang. So besides that, you had something called Natlik, where it's a game similar to hockey, but you're allowed to do tackles. It was mostly played on ice, so it's probably a precursor to ice hockey.
Interesting.
But it was also played on land. You had a bat that you that was shaped so that you could catch balls, and you were allowed to run with the ball in the bat.
But so I know this isn't quite correct, but it's like lacrosse-ish.
Yeah, it's some kind of mix between lacrosse and ice hockey, basically.
So Vikings taught Indians how to play lacrosse. Confirmed.
Possibly. So yeah, some other culture things here. Dancing was not a thing among Vikings. They did not dance. Although later on there's accounts of Vikings, like if you get to the 10th, 11th century, then it starts to spread out. But instead they would do poetry and storytelling, and then they would compete with poetry, like in insulting each other. I think that you kind of see it in like something like Crusader Kings, right? There's those games you can participate in if you play any of the Scandinavian.
Right, and you got to call your opponent.
Yeah, you
ugly.
must give him.
It's like a Viking rap battle.
yeah, kind of like a Viking rap battle. That's probably not a bad comparison.
Exchanging some witticisms.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, yes. I don't want to, drag the art down by calling it a rap battle. It's more
exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about wit and like proving that you're I suppose like linguistically better than your opponent than necessarily just calling them gay over and over.
Yeah, Kaczynski. It's competing at insulting each other, and then there would be cheers, etc. For those that did their thing well. Another thing was that for a long time there was a law that it's a bit hard to explain, but basically when you were playing a game and if you died during a game, then you couldn't be arrested for murder. Your murderer couldn't be arrested for murder unless he had like taken out a dagger during Natlike or something, right? But
if you stepped into the ring, you had to
deal
with the consequences.
Yeah, definitely, right. So but it's just interesting that there is it's like you're going into a battle, and if you die, okay, well that's it, right? There's no guilty party, right? If someone dies. And another game was something called Hutu. Huttudkast, and that is a game where you throw bones after each other. After you've had a meal, then like let's say you have the bone from a pig or something like that, then you would throw it after each other. That's the general principle of it. So it's about throwing food after each other. So it's like a formalized food fight
thing.
What else do we have here? Yeah, so we have something called Skinlight, which is a game. You imagine a longhouse and a small one, perhaps, where you have a man in each corner of the middle section, and then you would throw a roll of leather around, and you would have a man in the middle trying to intercept that roll of leather being thrown around.
Throwing a ball, basically.
Yeah, you're just throwing like a ball around until someone catches it, right? So that's probably more like a... Yeah, well, obviously it's an indoor sport, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you do that like if you're warming up for like any sort of ball sport. That's usually like a game you play, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Then you had something like that toe picture you had before. What was it called? Tug of War.
Oh, the tug of war. Yeah.
Tugahonk. Yeah. So that it's like, yeah, tug of war, right? Except it's like a super small rope, and it was about lifting your opponent from the ground.
Yeah. So if you could sort of lift them up and drag them by the butt, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
If you can lift them up, yeah, then you have won. What else do we have here? We have yeah, then we had the horse game where I think, did you have an image of a horse game in that?
I have one named Horse Fight.
Oh yeah. That was because you would raise horses to fight each other.
You would antagonize the horses and make them fight each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, raise horses and then antagonize them to attack each other.
Interesting.
So that's basically it. What I had. We went a little bit fast over it today.
Yeah, that's fine. 4-string gunslinger says the Norwegian Odd Haugen strongman trainer does this in the States at his gym. I assume he means the tug of war thing, not the horse fight.
Yeah, I think that one it's a simple one that has been developed multiple places across the world. If I'm honest,
It seems very effective at that's a strength training, right?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah, also it would be kind of hard to get 2 horses into a gym.
Yes. Simulate rowing, he says. Yeah, that makes sense. Holding a stick instead of a rope. Let's see here. Leo, you wanted me to highlight a chat. Is this the
Since we are taking questions? Yeah, actually, there's actually a body of work, and both archaeological and within the oral record, and then in the early medieval written record, where they start writing down things. How different rituals go on. Here you have essentially 3 variants of rituals of sacrifice. You have water sacrifices, you have fire sacrifices where you burn offerings, and then you have burial sacrifices or sacrifices for the dead or for ancestors, not necessarily in context of a burial, but they are different in that way that they are they are offerings for the recently deceased, the dead ancestors, or they are preparatory for your own death. The first one that you see in water sacrifices is usually in what you will find in bogs, pit bogs, or small lakes, for example, or large lake for that matter. But it's hard to find tended to be smaller lakes because within the Indo-European and Scandinavian tradition, bodies of water that are easily surveyed, like a bog, tends to have open water, or a small lake or a forest. What do you call it? We call it tjärn in Sweden.
Oh yeah, a pond? No, that may be too small.
Yeah, it's too small. It's more like between a pond and a lake, say like 100 meters or 200, 300 meters across, within steep confines of hills, forested hills. Due to it's something that happens up here in Scandinavia because of the landscape. It's very tjärn. It's same in Norwegian then.
Yeah, it is.
Sacrifice
where all the monsters are.
Yeah. You do sacrifices with tend to both spirits and then alfar, or to gods in this way, especially the gods of elves. The alfar is elves, same as the Tirna Nog in Irish or Pictish mythology, with the people under the hill, nature spirits in various forms. So these are also, as I said, within the context of alfar is also dvergar, which is dwarves. Which are a different strain, if you will, of land spirits. Especially then spirits of the mountain and of stone. And these are then sunk in offerings, and then sunk in bogs or in tjärn, for the reason that this type of bodies of water are seen as portals or gates between the 9 realms. So these are essentially then hyperspatial and spiritual interfaces. So if you leave them here, then the other will find them and see them. And these are also the ways that these that travel that travel happens between the worlds. The only exception to this is, of course, the rainbow, the Bifrost bridge of the gods. But access to the Bifrost is handled by Heimdall, the white god himself. And well, if you don't know him, you will not travel upon it. So that pathway is closed. The other one that would say that sacrifices to the gods through bogs and bodies of water is not done to the Aesir, but to the Vanir. The Vanir is the older part of the pantheon, and they are the gods of primordial earth, of nature, of the elements. The Aesir are the gods of the sky and the heavens. And to the Aesir, the offerings tend to be of a more spiritual nature, or of burning sacrifices, or sacrifices that involve the transition of life to death, because the transition of life to death within the Scandinavian and the Indo-European tradition is not one within a transcendent system that is a chthonic one. it is a transcendental from low to high. You ascend to the heavens. Unless you have fucked up, then you go back into the cycle. Then you go to hell.
Yeah.
To the halls and you walk the path of the ancestors. You will not sit. You will either sit around at the court of hell herself, or you will live out like a shadowed existence within the misty hills as a farmer until the end of days. You will essentially repeat your life in death. It won't be a bad situation, but it won't go anywhere anyway. So you will be kind of locked into that kind of mimicry existence until the
dog man.
Gods. Yeah, and the other thing is the rising towards the sky, towards the halls of the gods and the transcendent values, to become, in a sense, more than you are now, and become part of the greater cycle. So that is also why they differ there, because the Vanir is an older pantheon.
I was going to say they're the not the sky gods, but like they're commerce and fertility.
No, they are the gods of earth and nature. The Vanir essentially is by Odin as the Sky Father, and his single eye is the sun. You have Thor, who is the slayer of dragons.
I didn't mean literally sky gods. I mean like the Aesir are above the Vanir. Isn't that a thing? I'm not.
They are. It's a thing within the mythic cycle that the war, which mirrors the Scandinavian hunter-gatherer and the Aryan invasion war, because these are also, you can track where these gods come from. It ends in a stalemate. No one is greater than the other, and they exchange prisoners and they intermarry, and that thing goes. But the thing is that you have two things here. You have the Vanir, who are the gods of earth and nature, and you have the Aesir, who are the gods of sky and of higher concepts. They can't exist without each other. They complement each other. Without the greatest of the Vanir, there is no life. And when there is no life, conceptually, that is when the end becomes. So this is also why in the myth where or the mythic tract where Loki again does a really stupid shit and manages to construe a situation where Thor's hammer is stolen by Ulfgardlokkr, one of the mighty Jotuns or Jötnar, and he demands in for return of Loki's hammer, Thor's hammer. He returns he asks for the hand in marriage with Freya, and Freya is the god of spring, of life and magic, and within the say conceptual force, if the gods lose, the goddess in this case, who is embodies the concept of the rebirth of life in spring, they lose life itself. Then there will be no spring.
The absolute state of the world. I tried to find like illustrations of this story, and I keep getting like Marvel stuff.
Oh, the ashes. No, so the idea there is that they can't give the Jötnar. This is also a misconception, because within the Anglosphere, people think, oh, it's giants, like titans in the Greek mythology. But Jötnar is rather large plethora. Not all Jötnar are large. Some of them are very small, because Jötnar does not mean giant, it means devourer, that which consumes. And within that context, if you lose the concept of spring and renewal, that is an it's an automatic event trigger for Ragnarok, the Twilight of the Gods. Then everything ends. So that is why they have to dress.
This one, yes.
Yeah. This is why Loki hatches the scheme that he and Thor will dress up as Freya and her handmaiden and go to Utgarda Loki and try to get the hammer back. This is, of course, one of the many times where Thor, in a rage, almost kills Loki for just suggesting this. Because cross-dressing here is, within the mind, mind, religion, and state of being of the Norse Germanic peoples. For a man to dress as a woman is to transgress against fundamentals of nature. It is to transgress against.
And you're preaching to the choir here, Leo.
And the gods themselves, against the very ordering of creation. But in the end, Thor concedes after having a talking down from both his wife and from Odin that, okay, fine, it's more important. I didn't have my shit under, He managed to steal my hammer from my fucking bedside table. Okay, I'm gonna own it. It's more important to get the hammer back, and I will eat this L. This huge fucking L. I will do this thing because it's more righteous to do it than not to do it. The act of getting the hammer back and
claiming what was lost.
Facing that mistake is bigger than the transgression to dress as a woman. And this is essentially how this starts with this ends with they are going through the marriage ceremony and they are having a feast, and well, Thor is being Thor, so he's eating everything like whole hogs, drinking barrels of beer, and Loki has to make excuses. Why, because the Jotuns are, why is Freya eating so much? Oh, she hasn't eaten for like a month because she was so excited to marry you, and so on and so on. Oh, she didn't drink for so long, so she's drinking barrels of beer, and he, at one point, he tries to like raise the veil that she has, or Thor has, and you're like seeing like this huge mad red bursted eye that Thor has, brimming with rage, and he's like, oh, that's not good. It's like, nah, she hasn't like slept for 2 months because she's so excited to meet you. And then the marriage ceremony starts, and the traditional thing to do within the Scandinavian marriage is to have Thor's hammer, like a full-sized one, to be placed in the lap of the bride during the ceremony. So, of course, they're using in the myth the actual hammer, puts it in the lap of Thor, who then just has it with everything, kills everyone, races Utgarda Loki's fortress to the ground, grabs Loki by the neck, goes to his chariot, and goes back home, and more or less says, look, if you ever bring this up, I will fucking kill you.
As it usually ends with those two.
Yeah, that's more or less the dynamic there.
Nordanon says leptoids often cite this as proof that Vikings were trans-friendly until the evil Christians made us all transphobic.
It's kind of silly because that means that that's also like, they're trying to twist everything into their perspective, but the thing is actually that it's the other way around.
Yeah,
that it's rather a thing. I mean, we're now talking about a culture where you're not allowed to murder people back and forth. If you murder someone, you're allowed to pass 2 farmsteads or homesteads, and then you have to go into the third and say, hey, I'm me from here, and I killed that fucking guy. And that is a law that exists to protect you, because the closest forms probably is relatives. So that's not going to end well. So you have to get some distance, but then you have to declare that I killed this guy because of this reason. Now you are my witnesses. I'm going to fuck off. Someone, the local jarl is going to send someone within a week or something. Just so you know. Bye. However, within the context of this society, if someone even hints at you, gives a snide remark about you, that you're a homosexual, or that you have dressed in women's clothes in secret, you're allowed in public so that people can hear you and him. You're allowed to slay him where he stands, no matter who he is, at no consequences whatsoever.
Yeah.
To accuse someone of that is a public death sentence. And if the guy who we are insulting are, say, either a child or so old that he can't stand for himself, his sons, his uncles, or his immediate family to do the deed for him. Or say he's a cripple or something. Then his brother or his uncle or his father can just plant an axe in your head, and everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's fair. That's really fair. Had it coming.
Fjolnir says, I doubt the Vikings viewed the gods in transcendental abstract terms. To them, the gods were a part of everyday reality. And Vingel says, Norse religiosity wasn't like Christian religiosity, though. They didn't mind having some humor and sort of laughing at Thor in that situation, for instance.
No, absolutely not. I mean, one of the ideas here is also within Norse paganism. Also, I don't like the word paganism, but whatever one can we use. It's the only one the English language has for it. But the idea is
from the start.
The idea here is that you don't, as JG told the story of Rollo and Charlemagne earlier.
Yeah.
This is also an idea that you don't kneel unless you find the situation appropriate and the people do it. Sure, you kneel before the altar of the gods when you worship.
Yeah.
However, you don't kneel on the battlefield for Odin if you ask for something. Here, there's a context here. In certain situations, it is appropriate to kneel for the gods.
You kneel when you've been a dumbass, right?
Yeah, it is essentially that I have fucked up, or I'm asking for something. You don't kneel. Here's the thing: is that one of the concepts that say a battlefield prayer to the gods is not like, oh, do this and do this. It's more of the, oh, so we're gonna do this now. Witness me and judge me accordingly. You don't kneel in that kind of prayer, because at that level is that you expect to die, and you don't humiliate yourself. It's low to humiliate yourself when you stand in front of the prospect of death.
I mean, the action becomes part of the prayer, right? Or the
because you're not asking for life. You're not asking for something that no other than the gods can give you. You are asking of the gods the same thing that you ask of your superiors. I do not ask you to save me, because you can't. If it's my fate to die today, then I will die. I only ask that you see me and judge me accordingly to my actions. This is also one of the things that, the Norse were egalitarian. Yeah, not really. But in a certain sense there is there. But say you would
just highly meritocratic.
Within the hierarchy, here's also the thing that modern people don't have a hard time internalizing, that there is a meritocratic element here, but there's also a hierarchy. The hierarchy is never supplanted by meritocracy. The only way that the best and most valorous warrior in all the lands and all the sagas, he won't still be king unless he fucking boots the old king out, and that is contingent on that king being a really shitty king. because the best warrior of in all the lands and all the stories might not be a good king. Different skill set.
About finding someone who, well, being appropriate for the job is not necessarily the aim here, but you don't put the guy with no stats in martial to lead your army. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
And that's part of the Thor story here. Like, at the end of the day, like, if I have to dress as a woman to get my hammer back, well, I put myself in the situation. I'm going to have to deal with it. The practicality in that is something that I feel is lost in other religions.
No, there is a definite aspect there. I mean, you have come back at this idea. We know how, example, for like spring fertility rites were because there are records of this going on in both Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland well into the 1700s. So you have like you have people in court documents that are convicted of as it's called in many of them, ungodly worship, or it's not really heresy because they are pagans and they are worshiping, the local village worship Odin, but they also have a church and worship God. But they
drag weird period for about 300 years there.
and they are spreading blood and dragging great god poles of made from logs of Freyr through the fields to get a plentiful harvest each spring, and stuff like that. And the local clergymen are just writing furious letters to the diocese. You have to send someone. Stop this! I'm trying. You just won't fucking listen. And this goes on and on. And this also goes into this weird little idea that modern people have, that there's a broken line. People just stopped worshiping the gods in like 1166, and then it happened again in the 70s. So it's like no, not really. I mean, we have written records of this just keep going on and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, there are many records of Norwegian kings sort of being explicitly Christian, but still performing sacrifices in the old ways, right? So
yeah, and we have records between I think in my local home province from Värmland, where you have I think it's a Norwegian king that goes to and his attendants that are going to somewhere in Sweden to meet up. I think they are going to Sigtuna, one of the old centers. This is like in the 1400s. And they're coming across the border, and they have forgotten that it's the time around the vernal equinox, and it's late autumn. It's so modern day Halloween for the Englishmen. And they're coming to like the first big estate, and there's a, hey, can we, hospitality in this? No, it's Alpha Blot, fuck off. And there's it's what? Alpha Blot, are you stupid? No one enters the farm except those one who live here doing the Alpha Blot. Not right now, the farm is sacred. Go somewhere else. There's a church like an hour that way, and they have a couple of monks. They can take you for tonight. We're very sorry. Any other day we'll take you, but no, go away. So people were serious about this well into the 1800s, and people are still serious about this. So this idea that there's a quote-unquote broken chain of events.
Nordanon, I will not have your clergy griping in the chat. This isn't what we're saying. We're saying that it's not just a cutoff point. There was, there's a transition period of a couple of 100 years here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like everyone did it. It was perhaps on a populational basis not that common, probably not rare, but not, it's uncommon. Some people do it, most people don't, but a lot of the expressively pagan rituals, few does it, but in the day-to-day handling of things, everyone still does the small rituals because it's the substrata of daily life, and that doesn't change a lot. You still do this little domestic rituals when you wake up in the morning. When you start a fire in the kitchen. You go out to milk the cows. You go and do that and do that. All those little things, all those little small rituals that you don't really think about, the substrata of your daily life. That didn't change much from the 500s to the 1500s for most common people.
Yeah.
The same.
And I mean, I assume it's quite possible, probably even to be expected, that we're coming up on Christmas. I'm sure there are Nordic Christmas traditions that are held over from the ancient times that you won't find anywhere else, right?
Well, Scandinavian. If you look at Scandinavian Christmas traditions, which is then compounded into the Anglosphere, most of the Christmas traditions, or around December, the month of December and January, all the rituals and the thing that we now think of as Christians, does not come from Christianity. It is the Anglo-Saxons and Norse pagan mythologies and household
Jesus
rituals.
Went out into the woods and chopped the pine tree.
No, not really. There are no pine trees in the Bible. And it's the same thing that they moved the birth of Christ from. If you look at the oldest manuscript, is sometime in October, November. They moved it to the 24th, or rather the 21st, and then they moved it again to the 24th. To the winter solstice. And there's a lot of. It's the same how they tried to they put in Easter, for example. It rhymed up quite well with the vernal equinox. They moved it, and they introduced it as an equivalent between Freya and Mary Magdalene, as the same. Took the play. They placed a lot of the old gods as saints within the early Christianity, and this is how all this comes around. So it's if you look at Christianity, perhaps not today, but say in the 1800s, as it is practiced in Europe, 90% of all the rituals, all the dates when things happened, local variances, is various forms of local pre-Christian religions that have been incorporated and have filtered back into the orthodoxy. It is not core Christianity as was practiced in Rome or in Athens.
Well, now we're moving to
600 AD.
We're going to get all the Catholic groypers in the comment section if you go any further.
Yeah, but perhaps. Perhaps.
I mean, we've been going for 2.5 hours. Do we have anything that we want to cover now here at the end? I think this has been very interesting. I mean, you said that there's a lot of like Viking, if you want to know all the dates and everything, I think you can just Google Viking history on YouTube and you'll get like 7 British documentaries on it.
It has been done to death, and that's why I think that this format where we're going on, not perhaps the actual history, dates, persons, they did this and that. People already know so easily to access.
Trying to draw the outline of a culture and a people is interesting. Mm-hmm. I would like to do in the future, if we could do like a spotlight on a couple of key characters, because I think there's a lot of interesting sort of like warband leaders and kings and explorers, etc. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have both one of the greatest raid made by Björn Järnsida, Björn Ironside, into the Mediterranean, raiding Valencia in Spain and the Moors back and forth, and then going over to France, Italy, and the Mediterranean islands and just wrecking everyone. And then we have the Siege of Paris in 845 AD, which is the culmination of the Viking raids and colonizations of Normandy, and then we're pushing down into the realm of Charlemagne's proper. I think we could do something about that. A character spotlight, the life, the life and deeds of, and so forth.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, I have also thought about a thing here to end on, perhaps, and I think that Havamal has a lot of good ideas for right-wing youth, as Evola put it. That you will perhaps find interesting if we should take some readings, perhaps.
Sure, yeah.
There's a lot of ideas about women and tricky people in here.
Tricky people.
So I will just read some stanzas, and then I will be quiet, and we can, shortly discuss. I think we should start at, let's see, where is my English translation to make this easier, so I don't have to read and think and translate myself at the same time. There it is. 1 second. It is time to sing in the seat of the wise, of what the earth's well I saw in silence, saw and thought on. Long I listened to men, runes had spoken, counsels revealed, at Hars Hall, and Hars Hall, there I heard this. Lodfafnir, listen to my counsel. You will fare well if you follow it. It will help you as much if you heed it. Never rise at night unless you need to spy. Or ease yourself in the outhouse. Shun a woman wise in magic, her bed and her embraces. If she cast a spell, you will no longer care. To meet and speak with men, desire no food, desire no pleasure. In sorrow you will sleep. Never seduce another's wife. Never make her your mistress. If you must journey into mountains and firth, take food and fodder with you. Never open your heart to an evil man when fortune does not favor you. From an evil man, if you make him your friend, you will get evil for good. I saw a warrior fatally wounded by the words of an evil woman. Her cunning tongue caused his death, though what she alleged was a lie. If you know a friend you can trust fully, go often to his house. Grass and brambles grow quickly upon the untrodden track.
Very nice. Bros before hoes, don't trust the women. But that last one, I like that one. I mean, especially in adulthood, how quickly sort of friendships can fade if you don't, keep in contact.
Well, Havamal has a lot of this one, so yeah,
I like them. All right, how about we do a quick quick jaunt around the table here. JGreenriver, do you have anything more you want to add? What do you think about what we covered today?
No, I think I'm good, to be honest.
Yeah, it's getting late, so I think we're all getting a bit emptied of our energy here. Luddic Path, did you enjoy today's stream?
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. It was nice to sit back and
nice break.
learn something new.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you have your streams where you pretty much just talk the whole time, right? So
yeah,
Uh,
my throat is nice and
good.
nice and moist. I'm not dry as I usually am. So, but yeah, I mean, I expected that maybe there'll be slightly more activity, but there are certain other events that are like diverting attention of people in our spheres currently. So that was a bit
DEFCON
unfortunate
10.
for that to happen at the same time.
Yeah. Well,
yes,
it is what it is. We're always going to be here Thursday evening, no matter what happens, I think. So, Birkarl, any thoughts?
No, I really enjoyed. Finally got to go through all the good stuff, and give something else other than the 5th edition of Knut's North Sea Empire.
Yeah. Leo Borealis, any closing thoughts other than the Havamal?
Yeah, I wouldn't need like 3 more hours on this, but
well, I mean, we're probably gonna do a part 3 at some point. As I said, I'd like to do like a bit of a character highlight and probably go a bit further beyond maybe the Viking Age. That would be interesting.
Yeah. I think we should do a stream, on the Scandinavian mind and go through Völuspá and because Havamal is really just like a couple of chapters of sayings and really just good fucking advice. I mean, it's not inviting Havamal really. I mean, most of them are, I would say almost all of them are applicable to modern life as well. So because they're kind of generic and speaks to the core human condition and the human interaction. So that could be perhaps a good discussion stream just to go through all the stanzas. Okay, what do we have here? Can read through it all and then go back again over and see how it can be applied for our Zoomer friends.
Zoomer friends, yeah. Well, and the Völuspá is, explicitly a much more mythological and metaphysical text, I suppose.
Yeah, but you said that I had to recite all the dwarves, and they are in Völuspá.
They are in Völuspá, all the dwarves. If you want a peek at that, Vingel is in the chat. He has the fantastic Werner Herzog reads from the Völuspá video. And there's something about... Yeah, it's something about that man with his accent reading from it and talking about how it makes him feel compared to modern rap. warms my heart. Okay.
There's something inherently sad and degenerate that a man like Werner Herzog has to experience rap.
Yes. We'll also shill our stuff here before we leave. JGreenriver, do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, so I have been a part of starting up the Shieldings thing. So if you're interested in events for next year, then keep an eye out for the event in the UK. Also, if you like to meet people like us in real life, then take a look at basket weaving. If you're not familiar, then feel free to hit me up, and I will guide you on to what that is. Yeah, that's just about it.
Shieldings have accounts on Twitter, and they have a website as well, right? So people can follow that there if they want to follow the event publications and such, right?
Yes, and also I think we're gonna probably throw a link or two into the Longhouse Matrix community if people join there.
Can do that. Nordic Path, You're finally on Twitter. Sadly,
Yes.
I guess.
Sadly.
you have been defeated.
Yes, no, but yeah, the YouTube neuron activation wasn't enough for me, so I needed to increase the dopamine. So I'm on Twitter now as well. If people want to, they can just follow me at Athletic Path, and I have my YouTube channel, of course. And we should maybe shill the next episode.
Yes, next episode we'll have Witticism TV to talk about the boomers. Is that correct?
We're going to talk about American baby boomers and Dave Ramsey. That's going to be the template. So I think it's going to be a fun, interesting. Yes, maybe him as well. Yeah.
Leo Borealis. You have a Twitter, don't you?
Oh, sorry, me and the mute button again. Yes, I do have the worst curated Twitter of all time. I don't know. Follow it if you want rank insanity, and
yeah,
I know
it's forests and antique furniture and and other ramblings that comes up. I think your Twitter is very interesting.
Yeah, and me getting yelled at on Twitter by academic agent.
Yeah, or random women that you insult.
Usually yells at me when I agree with him, and he doesn't understand that I agree with him.
Isn't that usually how it goes?
More or less.
Birkarl, any socials you would like to share?
Yeah, I guess I am on Twitter. I don't put much effort into it, honestly. So if you want to talk to me, that's how.
Yep. Of course, we have in the description down below, you can find the link to our Element chat, which is like Discord, but it's encrypted. So no one can sell us out or have us banned from various online platforms just for voicing our opinions. There's
that
also
is where the effort all goes.
Yes. Actually, it's quite high quality. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the Longhouse chat. And the meme channel. There's also my Twitter, if you would like to follow me. After Elon entered the scene, I've tried to tweet a bit more with varying success. So if you want to watch that train wreck, you can follow me on Twitter. There's also my Telegram, in which I post every now and then if I feel there's something I can't post anywhere else. There's the subscribe star for this channel if you would like to contribute monthly to this channel. It helps us keep the lights on, as it were, in terms of the StreamYard subscription, etc. And finally, there's the Longhouse Clips channel, where Ludic Path, I should say, will upload segments of our streams cut into more digestible lengths. If you're someone that enjoys shorter content more than what we deliver here. Okay. Thank you all for watching. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something. Next week is Witticism TV, and we'll see you all then. Bye-bye.